Good morning, all you amazing human beings out there. Thank you so much for joining us. My name is Nikki. My pronouns are she, her, we, because I'm about community. Definitely. We're here at Youth Empowerment with Arthur Soriano and our special guest speaker, Jimmy Figueroa. He's from Oceanside. Woo, woo, giving it up
That's
for San
right.
Diego all the way through out. So before I start, I definitely want to just say thank you all for joining. Thank you for your level of commitment. Thank you for your level of involvement and wanting to be a part of the movement that we've been able to be so graciously a part of with our community mentorship and our credible messenger movement. It's been amazing. So we're talking about the Truth Tuesday. So you guys already know I want to start out with a quote because I feel like it just kind of brings us together. And as I was in my spirit this morning, I started thinking like, Ali, it's so dope to have community and just bring unity, and the forces when they come together are fire, right? So the quote that I have for us today is equality comes in recognizing that we are all doing different jobs for a common purpose. That is the aim behind any community. The very name community means let's come together and recognize the unity. Come and unity. Pretty dope, huh? What? Bringing that wisdom
Mhm.
today. What can
That's
I
right.
say? Putting it down, putting it down. The other thing I want to start out with, is as we go through life, and I think for all of us that have just been in this movement, that have the lived experience, that have gone through so much trauma, just being able to sit back and recognize and take a breath and open up this space with a strong sense and a spirit of gratitude. I think a lot of times we get caught up in life and we forget what to be grateful for sometimes. So I just want to definitely create that space. I want to thank you guys for joining us. Thank you guys for being here with us. And I will go ahead and pass it on over to Arthur.
Thank you, Nikki. Thank you, Jimmy. I've had the pleasure and the privilege to build the relationship with Jimmy Figueroa, but through work and through resilience programs, talking about different county contracts. They were first recipients in Oceanside, then Central Region. But I'm starting to get to know Jimmy as an individual, as a person, right? As a family man. And so really, really interested in open up the dialogue of this conversation. And a community mentor, an individual with credible messenger, also known as a credible messenger, is just not the individual with the direct lived experience, but it's the directors of different programs. It's the CEOs, the ones that support the lived experience are also community mentors, and that's what this revolution is all about individuals. Everyone has a role in it. Everyone has their part. And Jimmy, a pillar in his community, strong leader in Oceanside, and just it's our pleasure to have you here today. So, hey, Jimmy, I wanted you just to give us some background, your history as an
Yeah.
individual and as Oceanside, and whatever's on your mind.
Man, first, man, Arthur, like you said it, man, I think we've been in this space together almost going on 3 years now, and little by little we get to know each other more outside of just the work. Because a lot of times we get together and it's just like, let's focus on the work and the movement, how we can move it forward. But I'm thankful to be in this space. I'm thankful for you. I'm thankful for like you trailblazing this path along with a few others down in San Diego to create this opportunity for Oceanside to have resilience. Because without the advocacy of your work and your transition and transformation and the path that you decided and then you chose and that you like courageously walked into has created opportunities for folks down here in North County. And that just shows the how powerful the movement is. And Nikki, I love your energy. I get inspired by you. I get inspired by your words of encouragement. I get inspired by these podcasts. I get inspired by your testimony and just how you're living life to the fullest, given everything that you've been through. And I'm very encouraged by you. So I'm just thankful to be here. It's crazy because when we get together, most of the time it's around work, but it always feels like family. You know what I mean? And it has that like, man, there's that love there. So again, I'm grateful. But yeah, man, born and raised in Oceanside. Both of my parents immigrated independently from Mexico down to the United States. I mean, independently, meaning that they weren't married when they came. They met here in the United States. So my dad came over when he was 17. He was born and raised in Guanajuato. came to Tijuana for a little bit and then crossed over in the 70s. My mom was born in Zacatecas, and her family was coming little by little. My grandfather was here first, and little by little family started coming, but they met in the Solana Beach area, Eden Gardens area. Back in those days, in the 70s, a lot of immigrants from Mexico would move to that area because that's where the work was. That's where the fields were, and there was just a lot of work there. And that's why even to this day, you still see a resemblance of the Mexican culture in Eden Gardens, in the Solana Beach area, because that's what it was before that community was gentrified. And so around the 80s, you know, they started redeveloping Solana Beach and Carlsbad and all those areas, and it pushed people towards Oceanside and Vista and the other side of North County that people don't know about, which is like everything off the 78. And my parents came to Oceanside. At that time, they were still undocumented. I had an older brother, so I have a brother that was 4 years old, I believe, when my mom was pregnant with me. You know, they were detained by the Border Patrol when my mom was about to give birth to me, and they were let go after I think a day or two, and shortly after they got papers, and that changed. You know what I mean? That changed my family's life, because they no longer, at least my immediate family, right? Because my aunts and uncles were still living in this. Especially in those times, you have to live almost like quiet and, you know, in fear of getting picked up. And people still do to this day, but that was just my family's history. When I was born and raised in Oceanside. We lived in the Center Street community for a little bit. And then for the majority of my life, I was raised in Tri-City. And so, yeah, that was it. I have a younger sister, an older brother. And the majority of my family, well, a good portion of my family from my mom's side, because my dad was adopted. And so when he came to the United States, he was the only Figueroa. So sometimes there's a lot of Figueroas out here, and they're like, man, is that person related to you? I was like, nah, like just my brother and my sister are the only Figueroas, and my daughters and my wife, right? So it's like we're the only ones here from that I know of, that I know of are connected to my dad. But the majority of my mom's side of the family is huge, and a big portion of them immigrated to Oceanside. And so we're deep in the city, we're deep in North County. And so I was always raised around family. And that was kind of just like that background.
I've seen in your description talking about something about you had struggles in school and everything when you were going to school. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, man, it's crazy, man. Like a lot of immigrant parents, at least from my perspective, from what I've experienced and what I have seen, is like, you know, our parents who've immigrated here, they come with this like ambition. You have to, you know what I mean, to leave your home and go to a place that you know nothing about, get treated like a second class citizen, but willing to work, you know, with, you know, and have and deal with so many sacrifices and overcome so much, and then have kids here and know that there's an educational system set up for them that they can follow, or at least from their perspective, there's an educational system here that's free. In Mexico, it's not free. Both of my parents didn't go past elementary school because you have to pay. And in Mexico, you know, my parents didn't have, they both came from poverty. So like they couldn't afford to go to school past elementary school. And so here they're looking at it like it's free education. But growing up in the 80s, 90s, and you're dealing with like the rhetoric of like Proposition 187 and all of this stuff. And it happens all the time, right? Like every 4 years, whenever the economy starts going down, they start blaming the immigrants immediately. Oh, it's the immigrants, the immigrants. But growing up as a kid, it's like you're growing up, you have teachers that don't look like you. And you don't know anyone that's ever graduated from high school. You don't know anyone that's ever gone to college. It's hard to buy into that dream. You know what I mean? It's hard to buy into that reality because you don't know anyone that has a lived experience of being successful with school, even let a high school diploma, especially when I was young. And so for me, I never bought into like the school system. And so it was hard for me to like in class, you know, it was one of those things, man, like look at all my report cards. They all say like, you know, Jimmy talks too much. Jimmy's doing better now that we moved him by himself in the back. You know what I mean? Like, but it was always parent-teacher conferences. My mom's coming to school. The teachers are telling my mom that I'm gonna be a gang member, and look at how I dress, look at how I talk. My mom's crying. You know what I mean? From elementary school, it was just like it was a mixture of that, but it wasn't just me, it was all my friends, you know, and then really all my cousins that were my age, my peers, because we all kind of grew up together. We were all dealing with the same thing. And so that lasted the entire time. You know, in middle school, I was put on SARB, which was like for like extensive, like having a lot of truancies, you know, and not, I just wouldn't go to school because my parents, they both always got up at 4:30, 5 a.m. They had to be at work by like 6:30. School bus comes at 7:30. I'm just not going, you know? And so like, that was just middle school for me, man. And so like, I had one mentor, man, that this kind of like sets the trajectory of like where I'm at now. His name's Fai Pow Pow, and Fai's former gang member from Long Beach, lived experience. You know, he had moved down to Oceanside, and he was a security guard at the middle school I was at. And Fahi would be the only person on the entire campus that would pull me to the side and just do a check-in with me. Like, bro, how you doing, man? Like, and just rap with me, right? And he would always tell me, he's like, man, like, you keep doing what you're doing, like, this is what's going to happen next, A, B, and C. And after A, B, and C, eventually it's going to be down to X, Y, and Z. But he said, I've seen this before, right? But it was always out of love. And so I accepted it different because one, like he wasn't preaching to me. He was just like, man, I don't want to see that happen to you, but I love you regardless. Right. And through all my like suspensions and after school detention, all that, he would always just pull me to the side, put his arm around me, man. Like what happened, bro? You know what I mean? Like, and that had a big impact on my life. I ended up not graduating from middle school though. So like, I still like, I had an 0.0 in middle school, didn't graduate. Because I could play ball, I got to go to the traditional high school because I could play ball. But when I got there, it ended up being the same thing. And all that did too, is just, it put me in a space with more of my friends from the city. And man, that just, you know, it at that time, you know, it was exciting. It was fast. And again, the school was not something, like the classroom experience was not something that I ever like excelled in and did well in, and a lot of it had to do because I didn't believe in it, you know, and that led to more trouble, you know, and eventually by my junior year, I just gave up, man. I had 60 credits going into my senior year, you know what I mean? And so it was like, man, I'm done. And it was like, it wasn't just like going 60 credits going into my senior year. It was like 5 years now of like truancy and them threatening the school district and the police department. They had like diversion type programs, threatened me, send me juvenile hall if I miss. You know what I mean? Like this day, that day, I was like, man, I'm done, man. I was like, I'm done. And what ended up happening was when I was 18, 17, my mom was attending an adult high school, Maricosta Community Learning Center in Mission Avenue. And she was going there to learn English. So she would go to work all day, go to work at 6:30 in the morning, get off like at 4 or whatever, 5 p.m. She's at school trying to learn English. You know what I mean? And she told me, she was like, you know, they got a GED program there. Like, you should look into it. You might be able to get your adult high school diploma as well. And at that time, man, like I never got locked up, but I had the police come to our house too many times. You know what I mean? And when the police came, they usually arrested someone in my house. They arrested one of my friends, or they came for a purpose, right? It was just by the grace of God, man. It was like every time I ever got like detained or anything, I just got put in diversion programs. I never got put on paperwork. I got put on, I think, diversion programs like 2 or 3 times. And but seeing all my homies starting to get locked up, and it was like, dang, I was just with them, or like I was on my way. You know what I mean? And it kind of like that kind of clicked. And you know, my friends were older, so like watching them like now like going doing county, doing prison terms. And I'm just like, man, I'm about to turn 18. Like, I'm not trying to hit county. I'm not trying to hit prison. So like, for me, it was like, man, this is my way of telling my mom, like, look, I'll try this, but this hasn't worked out before. And when I got there, man, it was a different experience. Sometimes when you enter those spaces where it's like, you're dealing with educators that are used to or have experience and who care to work with people with lived experience or who have struggled in school, they talk to you different. And that care and love of how they accept you, all of a sudden it's like, oh man, like, because you accept me, I'm gonna try, you know?
Yeah.
And
that's powerful, brother. As you're telling this narrative, of experience of system-induced trauma, not only through the school system, but then the immigration system, immigrant parents, the struggles that they're going through. You're talking about late 1980s or early 1990s, right?
Yeah, yeah.
When you were going to school.
80s, 90s, yeah.
Yeah, so the war on drugs, the definition of three strike, slam, strike them out, you're gone. Uh, vicarious trauma that
Yeah.
you experience too, of individuals you grew up with in your hometown, by death, by getting lost in the system, catching life turns. And I'm just putting this, as you're telling me this narrative, I'm identifying all these different spaces. But this mentor, man, that just like, came into your life and showed you some love in middle school, right? Because
Yeah.
middle school can be so crucial.
Mm-hmm.
That could be that turning point. And uh, that individual had some type of influence in your life, and getting to a point where, okay, the school system didn't work for you, but the GED did,
Yeah.
right? And that's the same thing for me. I went only to the 8th grade, never went to high school, went to Arizona Boys Ranch, boom, I got my GED in 3 months, just because I felt that compassion and that love. So definitely can identify with your narrative. So what happened next?
Yeah, man. I ended up getting my GED in 2004, man, and that ended up like, that year was like, it hits everybody. Everyone's going through their own process. You know what I mean? Everyone has to go through their own process, because prior to that, it was kind of just like, I had the mentality of like, even with my mentor, because we stayed connected throughout that time.
Wow.
And I was like, bro, that happened to you. It's not gonna happen to me. I'm smarter. Like I got this figured out. You know what I mean? Like when you talk to mentees, it's like, I got it figured out. And yeah, man, it's crazy, because it's like, when you're in middle school, you go from like, people are catching fades and one-on-ones, and people start getting jumped. Sophomore year, freshman, people start getting stabbed. Get to that summer of like, when you're a junior and senior, man, like people start getting shot. You know what I mean? It's like, and it's a process that, as you get older, you see it. You're like, man, you're at that age now that this is what's going to start happening, because that lifestyle has a certain process to it as well. And there's a timeline to it that's almost like you can predict it on how it's going to play out. Hopefully you get to that, but it might happen sooner, and hopefully it doesn't happen sooner, right? But yeah, when I was 17, 18, man, that summer of 2004, yeah, man, there was too many close incidents where it was like, one specific, man, like my best friend, he had called me he was calling me from work, and all day he was calling me. He's like, man, let's go play basketball. Come pick me up after work. So I go pick him up after work, and when I get there, they're coming out with the 18-pack. And he was like, man, we're just going to go post up at the pad, play some dominoes, and barbecue. And he's like, you gonna come through? And part of me was kind of just like, that day I just wasn't feeling it, man. It was a Tuesday, and I was like, man, no, I'm gonna go hoop. And while I was hooping, man, this dude ended up getting shot 5 times right in front of the house. And luckily he survived. But then that kind of like that kicked off the summer. You know what I mean? And it was just incident after incident after incident. And another one of my friends got killed maybe like a month after that. And to me, that was enough, because then people were going to prison, and I was at that turning point. And in reality, man, I had 2 friends. One of them was the one that got shot. Another one, his name was Christian Talfero. He would always say, man, come to church with me, bro. Come to church with me. And I'm like, man, I'm straight. My thing was like, is there girls? Like, if there's girls, I'll go, right? And I mean, I was 18, 19, and I went. And I remember sitting in the back, but feeling like whatever the pastor was saying was talking into my life. And during that time, that season, that summer of 2004, I started going on my own, sitting in the back, but I caught myself like moving closer and closer to the front. And it saved my life, because there was a lot of times where it was just too close. You know what I mean? Where like, too close where I could have been an accessory, too close where I could have been the one that was shot. It was just too much. That for me, it was like, God's doing something in my life, and I need to make some changes, man. And my 2 boys that invited me to prison, both of them ended up going in and out almost throughout their entire 20s. And a lot had to happen for them to get in the different process. But almost everyone in my circle, you know, that became like, and I'll never forget this, man. And you know, I told this person this. There was all my boys were chilling. It was the same summer. All my boys were chilling. We're out there. Everyone was washing their cars, kicking it. And there's an OG chilling with us. It was one of my homies' uncles, and he was getting ready to go do a sentence. And he's very reputable in Oceanside. Everyone knows who he is. And I remember he was there hanging out with us. And again, they went to go get some 18 packs. They were just gonna chill. And there was like an afternoon service at church. And I remember I was like, man, I'm gonna shoot over there. Cause someone had invited me to go, and I was like, man, I'm gonna go. And all my boys were like, man, you can go to church though? Like, what? Like, you know what I mean? They started clowning. and this reputable person, he kind of looked at me, he's like, boy, you going to church? I was like, man, yeah, I think so. He was like, nah, man, get there. You know what I mean? And because he was someone of who he was, like, and for him to say that to me was just like, and I told him this later on in life. I was like, bro, like that right there validated what I was doing, because it came from like, he was about to go do a term, but he's also someone that no one's going to question in the city. Yeah. And so like for him to say that to me, and when I told him later on in life, he didn't even remember that. But it's crazy how like the things that we say and the things that we do can have a lasting impact on somebody's life, you know?
The power of words, the power of the tongue. Mm-hmm. It could be used for something good, and it could also be used for something definitely negative.
Right.
So you were telling me that you're studying for the bar. You pulled out some books earlier. Like, where are you at on that? Like, how's that going?
Yeah, man. So like, I ended up graduating from law school in 2018. The same time that the same time that we got the resilience contract. Yeah, and I'm studying to take the California bar in July. I think it's like the second or third week of July.
That's amazing. That's amazing, brother.
Yeah.
You know, when I was a kid, like I wanted to be a lawyer. That was like one of my biggest things, and one of my biggest dreams. Now I do it on the gang expert level, right?
Right.
But that's a hell of a big accomplishment.
Yeah, man. I never, at that time, I ended up getting a job working at the church that I was talking about. I got hired to coach the basketball team and be like the teacher's assistant at this. They had a private school, like at that church, and I got hired to like work with the middle school students. And man, being around them, and like when you're around kids, man, like little kids, like they still dream big. You know what I mean? Like even like they still have these dreams. Like they're not gonna like, they're like, man, I'm gonna be in the NBA. I'm gonna be like, they believe it, right? And so like being around them sparked like that in me again. But I was also like experiencing the fact that like now I'm sober, now I'm not like living, like I'm able to look at things from a different perspective. I'm able to step outside of the space that I was in and look at it from like, I'm able to analyze what's going on. And I was just watching my homies and even my cousins, man, like come out, like try to do good for a little bit, and then like get discouraged by like not being able to get a job, or like just being on paperwork, man, and like someone pulling up on them, and finally, or someone pulling up on them, like an enemy, right? So-called enemy pulling up on them and igniting, like, triggering them and watching them go back and just seeing that cycle. And one thing that's interesting about Oceanside, man, especially in the Tri-City area, because that's where I was born and raised, is that we're literally like 2 or 3 miles away from the county jail. Mm-hmm. If you live in Tri-City, you're 2 or 3 miles away from it's all off the freeway, but it's like if you can walk there, whatever. You're 2 or 3 miles away from the county jail, and you're also about 2 or 3 miles away from the cemetery, Internal Hills. So you have Vista County east of Tri-City, and you have Internal Hills west of Tri-City. Tri-City is pretty much College Boulevard to Emerald. Like those are the exits. The next exit is the county, and then the other way around, El Camino Real is where Internal Hills are. And so it's like, growing up here, your world is Oceanside. And those are places that you go to. If you're a male of color in the city, like those are places you go. You're going to go to county to see your homies get arraigned or visit them, because that's where the jail is. And you're going to go Internal Hills to bury one of your homies. Like that's how like growing up here, that's how you like see it. Like this is how you leave the city. Like, you know what I mean? This is what mentally, I think psychologically that does something to you, where you're like sandwiched between a jail and Internal Hills. And the crazy thing is that
Community trauma.
Yeah. And the crazy thing is like there's a community college in Tri-City as well. But it sometimes like it's hard for us to picture ourselves stepping into the community college out of fear, insecurities. But that's like, you know, I found that to be one of the most welcoming places, because again, it's a community college, which is different than the public school system. But yeah, watching my homies come in and out, you know, I felt like God was doing something in my life, and it sparked me. And I was just kind of like, look, man, I don't know what I want to do in life, but I'm going to go to the community college and I'm going to try to position myself in life. I don't know what it is, but when I could position myself so when my homies come out, I can give them opportunities and resources. But I didn't know what that looked like. And that was in 2006. Mm-hmm. And I remember going there and I had to take a placement test, and man, I placed at the bottom of everything. Right. And so they were like, look, man, you're going to have to like take like a whole year of classes just to get to college level classes. But at that time, everybody was locked up. And I was like, I have nothing to lose. I'm not in a position where it's like, I have nothing but time. Mm-hmm. And I had that purpose now, you know what I mean? And
the purpose and fire.
Yeah, man. And it's crazy because I always gave up when it came to school or didn't care. And here they were telling me like, you're gonna have to do a whole year worth of courses that are not gonna count. They're just to get you to college level courses. And I was like, well, let's do it, man. But it wasn't easy, bro. Like I struggled, bro. Like I took pre-algebra, like at the age of 20, I failed intermediate algebra twice. Like I was taking like classes right above ESL, put on academic probation my first year. But then once I got a hold of the system and applied my parents' work ethic, because I was like, my parents are getting up at 4:30 in the morning, man. Like, you know, my dad's a landscaper. My dad's out there right now, you know, as a landscaper working right now. My mom works at Albertsons in the, she cuts the fruits. Like, you know, like when you go to Albertsons and you get like the fruits, that's what she does for a living. And so it's
modeling.
Like,
she's been modeling for you guys.
Right. And so like they're out here doing it. So I just applied that same work ethic to the books. And yeah, man, like I went from being on academic probation at Maricosta to eventually graduating from there with a 3.75 or something. Wow. With like full ride scholarships from like every school that I applied to.
Oh man, that's amazing.
Yeah.
That's amazing. And then the resilience contract came up, right? You're in Oceanside. You're in this process of becoming a lawyer and all this education now, and then bam, here comes resilience in Oceanside.
Bro, it changed my man. That was like I was tripping when I first heard. So what ended up happening in 2017, I got called by the chair of the North County Gang Commission, who got my number from someone in the city of Oceanside. Because by 2017, now I had already ran mentoring programs in the different parts of the city. I had been working with youth now for like 10 years, right? I had been out here developing different programs throughout the city and different initiatives and, you know, policies and stuff. I get a call from the chair of the North County Gang Commission asking if I'd be willing to accept a chair seat, a commissioner seat on the North County Gang Commission. They said that they had asked me and Agner Medrano out of Escondido, and me and Agner are close. So I called Agner and I was like, look, bro, like if you do it, I'll do it, you know? And because then we felt like we can make an impact and make some changes. And so we came on, and I think like my third, fourth meeting on the North County Gang Commission, the County of San Diego comes and presents and says, hey, we got this, there's this program in New York called the Credible Messenger Program. It utilizes formerly incarcerated, former gang member, system impacted mentors from that community to mentor youth on juvenile probation. And I'm like, oh, that's dope. Like in my mind, I'm thinking that's dope, but never thinking that like it's going to come to North County, let alone Oceanside. And what they say is, yeah, you know, we taking a look at the analytics and the data and who has programming, who doesn't have programming, who has youth on juvenile probation. And the city of Oceanside has been selected as the pilot city. Mm-hmm. And immediately I was kind of just like, man, for me, it was like doing this work and doing this work, you know, in the city. And when it comes to kids on probation, gang documented youth that like have been kicked out of their schools and sent to JCCS, they there's no programs for them unless there's an after school program with someone special in there who's going to be like intentional about bringing them in. But usually all those after school programs are preventative based, and they're very much like geared towards like kids who live in the hood but who do not get in trouble, which are needed. You need those programs, right? They're very much needed. But whenever I ran those programs, I made sure I went to the park and recruited the kids. And in reality, man, the kids from the park, the kids that were from the neighborhood, and the kids who lived in the neighborhood, they all grew up together, man. They're not scared of one another. They look out for each other. You know what I mean? I had kids with 4.0s who never been in trouble in their life. And I had another kid that's from the neighborhood, and he's watching out for the kid with the 4.0 because he was like, man, I've known this kid. This kid's from my neighborhood.
Reality.
And I think that's something that people miss. But that's for something else. But to have something that was specifically to provide hope to youth that people have written off as lost causes, to me that was always my heart. But at that time we had no kids. All I could think about was like the mentors. And I was like, man, I know so many people in the city of Oceanside who have changed, transitioned their lives and want to give back. And they're doing it, but they're doing it as plumbers, and they're coming in later on at night to speak at the church. They're doing it as, as contractors, and they're speaking at this program. You know what I mean? It's just like, it's a lot. And to have something where we were going to be able to bring them in and actually like put a team together. As soon as that meeting ended, I walked outside and it was Ruben Leyva, and I caught him outside, and I was like, Ruben Leyva's assistant chief of probation. I said, look, if it's really coming to Oceanside, regardless of who gets the contract, we got the team already. They're already doing it. If you ask the community, they're already going to tell you who's doing it.
And that's something that I admire from you, Jimmy. Like, because each community has their own solution, and throughout this journey, I've seen that like being to fruition. Like individuals from Oceanside with the lived experience of Oceanside. When I've built relationships with these mentors, they're from Oceanside. They're connected to Oceanside, and that's your leadership already. Understanding, identifying, because the reality, that's the secret sauce, man.
Yeah, it makes the biggest impact, man, because like, and not only that, because like, so like to break down the dynamics of Oceanside, man, like Oceanside as a city is the third largest city in all of San Diego County. So we have about like 180,000 people. You have San Diego County. I mean, you have the city of San Diego, Chula Vista, and then Oceanside. We're getting close to about 180,000 people, but it's a lot of land. It's a lot, we go from the coast. What people see is the coast. What they don't see is when you go down to the valley. You go down to the Deep Valley, and you go down to these different areas, parts of Tri-City, where it's like, yeah, they're gentrifying the coast, but when you get down to you see the pockets, and you see how like the way that politics are placed and policies and business, how it's pushing all of our neighborhoods to one space. But me growing up here in the 80s and 90s, it was active. We had like X amount of Crip gangs, X amount of blood gangs, and then we have all the Southside neighborhoods, and then we had white gangs. You know what I mean? And so it was a mixture of it. So when I say all that to say that when we were putting the mentor program together, because we're a diverse city, we have African-American population, Samoan population, Mexican population, and then you have the Mexican population from the different neighborhoods. So you can't just get a Mexican mentor. You need to get a Mexican mentor from that neighborhood, a Mexican mentor from that neighborhood. And so when we put the team together, one, all the mentors were already doing this. Like I said, if you asked their neighborhoods, they would have already told you. Like, and I asked the neighborhoods, like, who do you know is like, and they would all say the same person, right? But when we put the team together, it was like, look, it's not about like just filling the roster. We got to get one from each. It's a puzzle. You know what I mean? So we need to get a Samoan mentor, who used to, be affiliated with this gang. We need to get a Black mentor that used to be affiliated with this gang. We need to get a Mexican mentor from this neighborhood, because when the kids come in, you don't want to have the kids come in and the kids just see one neighborhood. You want the kids to come in and be like, oh, okay, my uncle knows him, or my brother knows her, but also for the kids to see like, dang, all you guys are from rival neighborhoods. How are you guys like a family? Yeah. You know what I mean? How are you guys so close? And I think for the way that it happened, man, it couldn't happen without God, because it was like one way or another, we were already all connected. And I'll share this one story, man, because Timothy Jackson was the first community mentor ever hired onto the Credible Messenger contract, right? In San Diego County. He's the first ever. He had came home from prison, I believe, in 2017. And, we ran into each other like soon after he got out. And, Timothy had a big reputation in Oceanside. I knew who Timothy was since I was like 12 years old. You know what I mean? Like I knew who he was. And so when I saw him, immediately became family, and Timothy has been part of my family since he got out, and I'm part of his, and our kids do life together. And when he came home, I started telling him about the program. And then I was telling him, I was like, yeah, man, like Joseph Lopez was the next, because me and Joseph were already running into each other at different spaces, because Joseph was out here mentoring in different spaces, and his wife's a mentor out here too. And so I was always running into them as a couple. And his wife grew up down the street from me. And so they were our first two. But as we were putting the team together, I remember I was like, man, I got to get somebody from like Timothy's rival neighborhood. Right. And because we have to, they're still a big they're a big population in the city of Oceanside. That gang represents a big part of the city of Oceanside, Timothy's rival. And I remember I asked them, I was like, bro, I talked to the community, and they're saying Joe Talau is like that's someone that I need to reach out to. And Joe Talau was one of Timothy's main rivals growing up. Mm-hmm. And Timothy responded by saying, bro, if you can get Joe, this program's going to be amazing. And I remember I called Joe, and I was like, I started telling, you know when you start explaining the Credible Messenger program to somebody, and so I'm sitting there explaining it to him, he's listening, and then he hits me with like, yeah, who else you got? And I was like, oh, I got Joseph Lopez. And so this is all the mentors are connected, bro. Joe and Joseph were cellies in juvenile hall back when you used to have so they've known each other since like 14. They were cellmates back then. Right? We're all in our 30s. And so I told him, I said, I got Joseph Lopez. He's like, oh yeah, me and Joseph are cool, man. He said, he just told me, he's like, yeah, I still run into him. And he's like, who else? And I didn't say nothing. I was like, yeah, man, I got Timothy Jackson. Quiet, bro. It was quiet. It was quiet.
It's natural to feel like that, right?
And then he said, and then he responded, and he was like, yeah, man, me and Timothy used to have some fun, And I was, I know, bro. I said, he's the one that told me to call you. And then he was like, what? And he was like, dang, can you set up a meeting? And so we did. We set up a meeting down in the valley at a park, me and a couple of my boys that have been doing this work alongside with me. And for me, I'm pretty sure it goes like this in every hood, man. We kind of define generations by certain events, like shootings and stuff like that, right? Like that shooting kicked off this in the summer or whatever, or like, and I felt like when they came together at the park and they shook hands and they took a picture and they hugged, I was like, oh, this is a new generation. This is going to be one of those moments that it's going to spark something, because after that, people started reaching out, and they were like from both sides, from other neighborhoods, and they started coming together, and we started seeing more of that. Not so much from the youth, because the youth are still in it, but from our generations of like, now we got families, man, and it's almost like an appreciation of you survived this. Yeah. And we're beyond it. And how can we help the others, the next generation, from going down that path? But
I get angel hugs, man. Like as you're speaking this, because you're speaking truth, reality, and we're speaking life into this, because this is a reality. And I must imagine that Timothy has some leadership, past in his neighborhood, the other mentors as well, right?
Yeah.
And identifying that, and then using them skills to be a part of a job description, a mentor, a case manager, a director, right, is valuable. And it puts us in a place of, for the community, by the community. So I definitely admire the Resilience Program in North County. We've been out here advocating, and then it landed up there, right? And we were like,
yeah, I know that couldn't have been easy,
like
bro.
Little kids, like what happened?
I know that couldn't have been easy, man. I know that.
But patience is key. I was volunteering for years, also a year out of my circumstance. So definitely I knew doors were opening, and already a door had opened for us already. So, you know, that's part of a process, which is great. And the collaboration from Resilience in North County, Central Region, all our mentors, the recipe that you put together, or we're over here following it together, learning from each other and building from each other. And we definitely appreciate all you mentors in resilience, and anything that we could do to help elevate and push forward, definitely let us know. I want to talk about you, Jimmy.
Yeah.
What's your plans, man? Because I see you like a next mayor or something of Oceanside, or I
Yeah,
don't
man.
know, man. Like,
I think just to go real quick, man, just to say one thing, man, I'll never forget when you and Reggie and your wife came to do, when we had first put the team together. We didn't have youth yet, but you came down to do a trauma-informed training with the team and to educate us on trauma and trauma-informed care and the different levels of trauma. And I just saw the light bulbs click inside of all of our mentors of being like, dang, like this is all starting to make sense. It's almost like when somebody when you watch The Matrix and it has the red pill and the blue pill, and then you take that pill and you're just like, oh man, like this is all making sense. But I'll never forget how much you inspired and encouraged our mentors. Cause I remember you started sharing your story and they're like, man, he hasn't been out long and he's out here doing trainings. And like, at that time, they hadn't stepped into this space of being a community mentor. They were just training. They hadn't been out in the community yet from this capacity. But I think it goes back to like, have you seen somebody do it? And then when you came to lead that training, we weren't being trained by someone that got their degree somewhere and, didn't have this level of like system impacted, PTSD from the neighborhoods, like all this, hadn't done time in prison. Like, no, it was someone who had the lived experiences, came in to train our mentors with the lived experience. And the way that it impacted them, not only did they receive the knowledge that you were giving them, but they were inspired and felt hopeful going into their new roles that they were stepping into. And so, man, that to me, like that kicked us off, man. And I'm thankful for that. I appreciate
the iron sharpens iron, man. That's just the truth. So,
but yeah, man, what's next, man? I think from the very beginning when I stepped into this space, like, from being a high school dropout to now, it was always about like, how can I elevate the voices in the community, right? How can I elevate like my parents and my family's voice? How can I elevate people that were formerly incarcerated? How can I elevate their voice to show them what's practical and what's knowledgeable, like for everybody? You know what I mean? Like there's certain laws out here. I was like, man, this makes no sense. Like we're sitting here holding people back. This can help the economy. This can help the city. It's going to help families. And so little by little, the advocacy and the communities just came from like, the more that I was able and blessed enough to step into spaces like higher education, the more that I was able to see what was taking place in the city, at least in my hometown. Because my focus has always been Oceanside. Like my focus is always like, what do I have the capacity to impact? And it's like, I know Oceanside. This is home. This is my family. And I have the capacity to impact Oceanside. So that's always been my focus. And so how can I elevate the voices in the different neighborhoods that don't get to have, that don't get, how do I put it, that don't get prioritized? You know what I'm saying? When it comes to the city's budget, when it comes to the laws, when it comes to making decisions, their voices are not prioritized. And so I was like, how can I elevate those voices? So that's where I'm at now. And resilience for me was always that. How can I elevate the voices of our formerly incarcerated community and the youth? But now, like moving forward, man, like after this past election here in the city, because we go every 2 years, and we have districts. So we have districts for city councils, and the district that I live in was up for city council, and my wife was like, "Man, are you gonna run?" And I was like, at that time, but for real, like at that time, I'm still like, man, I'm still building resilience. Like this is my baby. Like I'm still in the process of like, it has to get to a certain point.
Yeah.
My goal with resilience has always been to like get it to a certain point where it's sustainable. Yeah. And then I can step away, and then the program can be 100% operated by formerly incarcerated, system impacted mentors. Because I don't want people.
That's the sauce, man. You build leaders, and then you move out the way.
Right, because I don't want people to look at resilience and say, "Oh, but Jimmy's running." I don't want that. I want to like, and and once it's just, and we're almost there, man. We're almost to the point where it's like, it's a machine, right? And so, but I say all that to say that she was saying, "Are you gonna run?" And I was like, "Man, it's just not time."
So your wife called you out.
Yeah, she did, man. And then, you know, after the election ended, in November, we were advocating for certain things here in the city of Oceanside. And she hit me again just like last month. She's like, listen, she heard me on the phone call. I was upset after like a city council meeting. It was late at night, it was like 10:30. And I'm on the phone call with other advocates in the city. And she's listening, she's like reading, she's doing other things. And I hang up the phone. And she's like, look, you guys are doing as much as you can from the space, the seats that you're in, from where you're at. You're doing as much as you can. She was like, you guys have to get in those spaces. If you want to make the impact that you want to make, you need to get in those spaces. So like currently I live in District 3, which is like part of downtown, the Tri-City area where I was born and raised, and other parts of the city along like the 78. And the next election in 2024. So I've already told the community, I've already told my wife, I already told the people closest to me that like, I'm not gonna let another election pass me up. Like I'm running in the next election for sure.
Oh wow.
Yeah. Okay. And so like, I'm
okay. This is recorded because I didn't even know that.
Yeah, man. So like I'm at that point now, but it goes back to like, it's always been like, if I step into that, whether I win or not, now I'm igniting, activating people and the kids that I work with. Like, man, I'm with Jimmy. Like I can touch Jimmy. Jimmy's here. Like if he can run, I can run. You know what I mean? And it goes back to the same thing with resilience. Like, how can I step into something and then hopefully inspire other people to be like, man, no, I can be a city council. I can be mayor. I can be like, and I think for us, the more that we have folks with the lived experience in those spaces, the more that our communities are going to be prioritized. Because right now we don't, and then we're always like, what can I get on the agenda item? Oh, I can't get on the agenda item. Okay, I'll speak at public comment. And you know what I mean? We got to get past that, man, to the point that we're in the seats. Because that's what it's about, man.
No, that's true advocacy. And I know we've been meeting different programs and, you know, our same message, getting it across to get it to our county board of supervisors and city officials to know what the community mentor, also known as credible messenger, is, because San Diego County is they don't know what it is in general in communities. So that's a process, but ultimately the way you put it, man, that's power, brother.
Yeah,
that's definitely power. And anything that we could do to help support that, we're definitely here. So we appreciate you. And what's your last message before we hand it off to Nikki? What's your message that you want to get across to community, systems, county board of supervisors, transformation? What is it that you want to say?
Yeah, the quote that I know, I love how Nikki started off with the quote. The quote that that kind of hit me is that that says, if youth aren't embraced by the village, they'll burn it down to feel its warmth. And I want people to know that, you know, all of our mentors for resilience either live in Vista or Oceanside. All of our kids live in Vista and Oceanside. We all live blocks away from a handful of kids. The impact that that's had on the city and with our youth, to know that it's not like we come to the city, service the city, leave. Like we live here. And so to see what the mentors have meant to the city of Oceanside and Vista, my message is that every city has community mentors out there. Every city does. And I think it's up to the systems to start connecting to the community and asking who those individuals are and bring them in. Because, you know, Jamie, who's part of the Resilience family, and she also has her own nonprofit, Sisters of the Streets. She would always say, who better to serve those than those who have been through it, right? Like, we're just going to understand it in a different way. We're going to understand the trauma. We're going to understand what it feels like to be locked up. We're going to understand what it feels like to have a quote unquote enemy or whatever, right? But my message is that every city has community mentors, credible messengers, every city. And the systems and our local governments, if they really want to reduce recidivism, they need to be activated.
Yeah, they need to invest.
Yeah.
They need to invest. Thank you. Thank you, Jimmy, Nikki. I know Jimmy and I just been conversating, but
It's
what do
all
you
good.
think
Let me
about?
soak up that knowledge. I'm with it. I love the energy and just to be able to be in the space of greatness, man. I'm not losing. I'm 2 years out and I'm around powerful people, powerful mentors. You guys are my mentors. I wasn't here at the root of it all. I wasn't there in the beginning. I wasn't there in the struggle. I was in there fighting for my freedom, and I ultimately made it home and have been graciously afforded amazing opportunities because of you guys, of all of the things that you guys have done and put in the work and paved the way to allow me to be a part of this experience, of be a part of this movement. So I just sit back and just like I said when I started out, I'm just sitting here in gratitude, really, in all actuality, and I'm soaking it up. I'm learning and I'm being mentored through you guys, and just the conversation that you guys were able to bless me and everybody else that's watching. It was powerful. And the thing I love that you closed out with that quote, Jimmy, because as I was listening to everything it was that you were saying, it's like I think of the kids, I think of everybody that we ultimately have contact with, right? Whether it's the board of county of supervisors, whether it's those kids in the streets, whether it's the kids that are getting those 4.0s. The thing that goes without saying is we are all human beings. And it goes back to the mentor that you had when you were in middle school, the smallest attempts of just to be recognized and how much value we find in that. And for us to go throughout our lives and remember those experiences. And that's why I say it's so important with our interactions and the interactions that we have, because every interaction is an important interaction, and some people don't forget. And sometimes those are the powerful motivators that lead us to the next step, which ultimately led to you being in the presence of a big homie that said, you better do that. You better go to that church, right? How he don't remember, but you do. And how ultimately that might have changed the trajectory of your next step. That step that day might have saved your life.
You cut
Incredible
off.
message
Hello? No.
is just it's that imperative of how it is that we can influence people to change the trajectory of their steps to ultimately save their lives. It's that big of an influence. And that's what it was, the strings of those life events that you just pointed out, Jimmy, that made me so, it was like an aha moment. And we have so many credible messengers and so many people that are in
Okay. I think we had technical difficulties. Okay. This is but hey, man, when Nikki talks, she just brings the power, huh, Jimmy?
No, man, I love it. Two years out, and you're the CEO of Youth Empowerment, man. Like, you hit the ground running,
Yeah.
and I think that's what inspires others too, because you have people that are, and this is something I always tell them, we got people that are locked up right now who are looking at the mentors and being like, man, I can be a mentor. I had a homie who got out earlier this year who knew most of the mentors, right? And he had different relationships with the different mentors, right? But he got out, and it wasn't like he hit me with like, man, why are you working with so and so or whatever? He called me and he was like, bro, how in the heck did all y'all come together? And he was just like, that is crazy. And he started telling me the stories, and I was like, bro, I know, like, and he was like, bro, like, he couldn't believe it because he was doing federal time, came home, and he was kind of like, how's Timothy Jackson and Joseph Lopez and Joe Talao and Sandra Moore, like, what? You know what I mean? And so it's like, for the city, man, it's just dope. But I'll say this, man, about my mentor in middle school, Faye Pow Pow. And this is how powerful mentorship can be in the impact. And I'm sure you, Arthur, you've been doing this for a while, so you've seen it. I met Faye when I was 12 years old in middle school. Everything he told me was going to happen, when it started happening, I was like, dang, he's been right about everything else. Like, so he's probably right about the next step. When I graduated from Berkeley, man, because I ended up going to school in the Bay Area, when I came home, he was one of the first.
Berkeley? Okay.
Yeah, I went to Berkeley.
Out. Okay.
Yeah. So when I came home, man, like, when I came home, he was one of the first. I had a graduation picture. I wrote, I just thanked him, man. And now I'm like 26. You know what I'm saying? Like 14 years later, I took it. He's at Oceanside High School now, and I took it to him, and that meant everything to me.
Yeah.
And then when I got married, he was at my wedding, bro. This is like 15 years later. You know what I mean? So it just shows you the impact of someone loving on you. And so there's certain things that my experiences with the Oceanside Unified School District, I work with them now because I want my youth to have a better experience than I did. But I would always say, man, I succeeded in spite of the school district. But like when people ask me like, what was the most impactful teacher I had? I'm like, nah, it was Fa'i Palpa. I was a security guard out on the playground. Like that's who impacted my life on like within the Oceanside Unified School District. And that's who was invited to my wedding. And that's someone that like, to this day, man, like that's the power of mentoring. Yeah. You know what I mean? And even if it was just my life, that was one life that I'm grateful for. My parents are grateful for, my wife, my kids, like the impact of mentoring is, you can't put a price on it, man. Cause we're talking about lives.
And you can't measure it in a day.
Right.
Like that's
you can't. You can't, because who's to tell me that you guys aren't success stories?
Yeah.
You get like, who's to tell me the mentors are not success stories? Yeah, most of them didn't change their life until their 30s, but man, they're about to be impacting like the city for the next 50, 60 years. Watch how many lives they're going to impact. Like, how is that not a success story? You know what I mean? And so
measure that. Nikki.
Yeah. Sorry guys for my technical difficulties.
No, you good. You good.
No,
You
that's
good.
okay. I was like this. I was like one of them. When you were talking, I was like one of them little kids, like just paying attention. Just
like I said, I just appreciate the conversation because it just moved my spirit. You know what I mean? Yeah. And as I learn and I soak it all up, the wisdom and knowledge that you guys have. So thank you so much for everybody that's watching. Thank you so much for being so dedicated in your embrace and your loving on us. For all of the different shout outs that we get. Thank you guys so much for just being a part of it. Your presence alone empowers us even that much more. So your willingness to be a part of this means a lot. We're all community and we're all here serving a purpose for the greater of the good of all. So with that being said, make sure that you like our page. If you could like our page, that would be great. Follow us on Instagram, on Facebook for sure. We're here, we're live, we're in person, we're in City Heights out here in San Diego. By all means, stop by the office. We're here constantly contributing to the community. So I just want to thank you, Jimmy, so much for everything that you're doing, for all that you're depositing, all of the energy, all of the forces that you have made move in motion to just escalate the value and elevate the voices of all of our folks that are experiencing any type of system induced trauma, creating opportunities for everybody, and just the love that you have for your community, for your hood. Man, it shines and it shows, and I could definitely feel the love and the elevation in your spirit. So thank you so much. So with that, we'll do a one-word checkout because that's how we end it. And I am feeling phenomenal.
I am inspired.
I'm thankful.
Awesome. Yeah. All right, you guys. Well, thank you guys so much for watching. We appreciate you. Share this.
Man. Appreciate it. Thank you.